Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the 220 Denver Design Week virtual event.
Hello, how you guys doing?
Actually, Stephan, if I could just ask, if you can hear us, would you please raise your hand so we can see? Oh, sorry, that's right. This is a recording. Never mind. Forgive me. I got to remember that.
That again. I've almost forgotten what it means to kind of be able to reach out and say hello and actually, see somebody else other than my screen. Anyway.
Yes, I hear you, man.
Well, here we are. We're really excited to be here, and I would have loved to have been there with you, Jason, in the heart of Denver, presenting with you on the stage together for this deep dive on sustainability and circularity.
Me too. However, I don't look that good in a mask, so I am kind of glad that we can do this virtually. That way people can see my lovely smile and yours as well. So,
well, plus the Zoom kind of makes it all look pretty. You know, I really push that slider all the way to the edge so they make me look as young as I possibly can.
That's right. And I superimposed the image of Brad Pitt on my face, but it's just the lips moving that are mine. So,
well, seriously, my name is Stephan Clambaneva, and I'm on the IDSA board of directors. I'm actually the sections director, special interest sections, which basically means this is another fancy word for sort of different disciplines or interests that people have within that are members of IDSA. Jason?
And I'm Jason P. Belaire. I'm the incoming chair for IDSA. And might I say, it's really awesome to be able to share this time with you, Stephan. I have enjoyed being on the board with you, and I enjoy watching all the things you get involved with and all the successes that you have, and you're very inspiring. So I look forward to this.
Same here, Jason. You know, it's great to be back on the board with you after a little hiatus once my son was born. But let's kick things off. Again, as Jason said, my name is Stephan Clambaneva. I've been in New York for the last 20 years, and I really excited to be here today. I'll give you a little bit of an intro about myself and kind of why I'm here today and why I think this topic is important for us. So to kick things off, this is where I got my genes. I was born in the Oakland Berkeley Hills, son of a high school teacher who had a bit of a rebellious streak in her, who took the summer in the 60s to go to South Carolina to help desegregate the schools. And I'm the offspring of one of the truly early citizens of the world looking to reconnect to his ancestral culture. And that's where I got my culture from. It's also where my origin story begins from a design innovation point of view. And what's funny is that while they say history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes, I followed my father's footsteps and got a summer internship in the design studio at an R&D agency called Satine, who, among other things, was working on the Paris-Dakar dune buggy. So this is where I got my empathy and where I realized that I was a third culture kid. Just ask me about that, personally offline if you want to find out more. Finally, New York is where I got my design chops. This is where I built my knowledge and experience and resilience. They say about New York that the easy things in New York are really, really hard, and the hard things are very easy. Going to the supermarket, really hard. Front row tickets to your all-time favorite band, the easiest thing in the world. New York is also where I met my wife and where my son was born. And so now I have an even bigger purpose, in life. Our purpose is to ensure we leave this earth better than we found it for our future generations, So a little bit about who I am and why I am who I am. So my design origin story is watching on TV the early iteration of the ideal story of reinventing the supermarket cart. This thing called human-centered design. So why design consulting? Even as a youngster helping out in my dad's office, I really like to make things better and to help make better things by design. So I guess I was always a design consultant of sorts, design thinking, design doing, creating from creating custom Lego parts to custom Hot Wheel tracks. You know, it was always my thing. Why am I so passionate about sustainability and circularity and helping drive the circular economy? You could trace it back to my subscriptions at Ranger Rick magazines in the early 80s. I learned from very early stage that everything is interconnected and you have to take a holistic systems thinking approach to problem solving. You know, seeing my father start and run his own business kindled in me the entrepreneurial spirit. I always wanted to help instill others in others as soon as possible. So here's a picture of me mentoring ninth graders at the Lycée Français of New York for their startup weekend. And I've been doing this since 2018, since its inception. So all this is for me to tell you that I consider myself a design hybrid. You know, left brain meets right brain, and sort of design and business, design and leadership, design and sustainability. And these are the kind of things that sort of define who I am. Now, why I do a little bit about what I do, I do a lot of public speaking because I feel I really need to emphasize on the importance of design and evangelize on the power of design, and you know, continuously push it so it's no longer just has a seat at the table, but has a voice that's loud enough for the C level executives to listen to. You know, my focus is also on my design maturity. So we're living in the age of experience, and we have to develop sort of that sort of holistic approach to design. You know, with a rate of change of business accelerating, and as new disruptive business models are constantly upending and reinventing their industries, I felt it critical to be a part of the startup scene as well, and you know, embed design thinking and design leadership into every startup I mentor. And sort of the balanced approach to the kinds of projects. Here's an example of the kinds of things that I've been doing. You know, following the left brain and right brain logic that I was telling you earlier. Sort of see some of the things that you folks in Denver will be familiar with, because I was out there earlier a couple of years back doing some workshops for earlier Denver Design Week, and I've been out there for the Outdoor Retail Show and a couple of other projects that we've been able to work together with Jason. And you know, from a corporate perspective, I've spent 10 years at IBM. I had an opportunity to work in several different global business units during my tenure there, and you know, started off at the Global Business Innovation Services consulting team, working on a go-to-market strategy for optimizing the product development process for various different industries, including retail, consumer goods, medical, and CPG, and even was asked to lead the implementation of the strategy for the PLM product lifecycle management organization in a particular industry. So, you know, after that, I spent another almost 10 years at Dassault Systems, where I led the last 5 years. I led the design innovation and digital transformation projects out of the US studio. So, number of positions over my tenure there as well. With an example here, you can see we were IDSA finalists a couple of years back, something of which I'm really proud of. And sort of to kind of show you the sort of the left brain, right brain example, I'm also very comfortable in the digital realm, and having access to the tech with these large organizations. I had the opportunity to research how augmented reality could become the next medium for designers to work in, thus eliminating the metaphor of the screen and the mouse and designing directly in 3D. So here's an example of where I presented another hybrid designer. I was talking about Leonardo da Vinci. And I alluded to this in my introduction when we first started, but I was elected and served on the board of IDSA since 2010, off and on. I'm also on the advisory board for NYC by Design, which is New York Design Week, and evangelize on the strategic value of design and sustainability through my personal and professional brand. So, you know, that's in my introduction. I'm going to sort of give you a little bit of my thought process as to why we're talking to you today. And so, you know, honestly, stuck at home to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 had me thinking of the 2008 New York Times essay by Michael Cannon. It was called Design Loves a Depression. And following the 50th anniversary birthday I've also been thinking of planet Earth. So this global pandemic has been urging me to define what designers need to do for sustainability and climate change. Many articles argue how interconnected these crises are, and even that climate change is just a slow-moving pandemic. So, we need to make change happen through innovation, human-centered design, and problem solving with holistic systems thinking. So how do we do that? We can't just afford to clap every day for our doctors like we do in many cities across the US and Europe, but we need to emulate them. They actually subscribe to the ethical canon of first do no harm, stemming from the Hippocratic Oath. So how about us? These kinds of principles are can drive sustainability and circularity by design. In light of this current pandemic, we can't afford to take one step forward and 20 steps back, like after 9/11 or the financial crisis of 2008. So just adopt the Hippocratic Oath, make beautiful things, but do no harm. This is the challenge that I set out to you. So, when I leave you, what I'm going to leave you with here is this special custom created beautiful animation or graphic that was created by Graham McKay. So he customized this just for our conference, and it's super applicable today. We are talking about these 4 interconnected tidal waves just about to hit us. And we need to make sure that we don't just address one of them, but we connect and try to solve all 4 at the same time. So with that sort of brief introduction about myself, I'm going to turn it over to Jason to do the same.
Thank you, Stephan. And once again, as those who've just viewed your introduction, they can all start to see why I feel so thankful to be connected to you. All the knowledge that you've gained and the fact that you're always willing to share with me and with others is really outstanding. So thank you for that. And I have, in fact, signed a hypocritical oath. Sorry, that's a different kind of oath. But yeah, I'm Jason Belaire, and I have a consultancy here in Denver, Colorado, and I really have transitioned over time from really focusing solely on industrial design and product design into becoming more of a strategist and more of a thought leader based on the different experiences I've had, basically because I really feel that we as a culture can benefit from stepping back and looking at who we are individually and focusing more on the psychological aspect of us as individuals that will make us better designers and give us better opportunities to really transform our cultures, either meaning around us at our homes or also within the ways that they can actually record, just the opportunity for us to be able to look at things, I guess, more holistically. So if you go to the next slide, please. So just to kind of explain, I really have been fortunate because I am very much involved with a number of different areas in the local culture and also internationally, where I've had to really learn a lot and ask questions and gain knowledge and do different things with different people. And so Denver Does Design is a local organization that some of you who are watching will know who they are. Been on the advisory board for them. I was on the presidential advisory board for AIGA in Colorado, which was very exciting for me to be able to sort of learn languages of design that were outside of the industrial design realm. I've been invited to a number of different awards programs, and this last one last year was the Taipei International, where they flew me out and I was able to share some of my emotional intelligence research and findings, as well as be a judge. And then also I've been on the advisory board for 2 of the local design schools. I've also been helpful in the advisory board for structure events and curating experiences and content, and then also for IDSA. Next slide. It's also really important for me to sort of help you understand that the scope of the things that I get involved with aren't too narrow. It's very broad because I have a lot of different interests, and I feel like I want to continue to capture different versions of design and concepts and language. So Sterling Rice Group here in Boulder, Colorado, I've been very fortunate to get up there and be a part of their innovation council and work with really huge Fortune 500 brands to realize different concepts and designs. I was actually very connected to Denver Design Week a couple of years back, and learned a tremendous amount of our culture here in Denver, as well as how to put content on to help all of us come together and edify each other and encourage each other to do what's right in regards to design. Been very fortunate to work with international brands, designing global lines for them, like the Fuma, which is out of France, out of Annecy right now. And then I also invest. I really put my money where my mouth is. So Sola is a company that's based out of France as well, that makes sustainable shoes made out of recycled materials and cork and bio-based byproducts. And then there's an incubator in Argentina that I'm connected to, and one of the brands is Toy, that is a children's manufactured toy company, and it's been very awesome to learn about things and be very global in that sense. And then I think it's important too to help you realize sort of why I've been in the position I am in terms of being the chair for IDSA. I think it's really connected to the fact that I was connected to IDSA very early on when I was a student. When I left the industrial design scene, I went into architecture and became more of a designer and an architect, and learned cut my teeth up in Wyoming. But I also got involved with AIA. And that was really important for me to continually find ways to give back and to understand, what organizations and how organizations run and the way that they develop culture. My wife is from Argentina, and we moved to Argentina back in 1998. And from that point on, I was always searching to get involved with the design community in Argentina. And it's a very heavily Italian influenced culture down there. So I got to go and attend meetings and understand, that aspect of it. Came back to the States and then got again involved in IDSA, and where I was the chair. And then from that point on, things really skyrocketed with the way I was involved and engaged with different communities and different aspects, which really leads to the language build that is so important for all of us. And with this particular deep dive recap. So what does all this mean? One must think differently. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. And when you don't drink the Kool-Aid, sometimes that causes you to stop and look at, how did I get to the way that I got to today? Like my thinking, where was it formed? What were the constructs? What were the biases that influenced me? And I feel like when you look at this particular graphic, back in the day, in the 50s, the doctors were smoking in the office while you were go and get a checkup. And, to this day, we think that cigarette smoke and all that is acceptable and it's fine, because back then they said it was okay, right? And so now we're here today. So you could start to feel and see how it started off as this sort of really wonderful, it's accepted, it's good, it's not a problem, but it's led us down into this path of destruction, so to speak. So it's almost like we've been indoctrinated, And I love this image from Martha Rosler, just like she's sitting there, this lady's cleaning the drapes and she opens it up and there's Vietnam happening in the outside. And it's like this sort of surreal thing where we all live in this world where we get to choose what we want to see and how we want to see it, which ties in with what Stephan was saying earlier about the need for us to really wake up and look at the world and how we need to be more active and more intentional with the things that we do. So, I mentioned it earlier, I really get involved with emotional intelligence. I think that's a really important aspect of design that needs to continually be evolving and looked at. But, some of the stats that I found that I think are really interesting is, there's only 36% of people tested that can accurately identify their emotions when they happen. Therefore, how can we conduct proper research if the majority of us don't even know our own selves and why we feel the way we feel? So there's a cause and effect when we are not looking critically at all the things around us. And there's a lack of innovation in the world today because of that. And it's causing this is something where, and I like to do this exercise where I ask people to just close their eyes and really look at the opportunity for us to try and see how, what is actually in there, what is going on in in this trash, and where did it come from? So we have 8 billion people that are inhabiting the earth today. And by the year 2050, we will have quadrupled plastic production. And 8 out of 10 infants have been found with I always have a hard time saying this, Stephan, with phthalates,
Yeah,
phthalates, thank
phthalates.
you, which is a plasticizer. And they're finding it in their blood and in their urine and in their systems.
Yep.
And so we don't just throw stuff away, that like in the landfill. We're also throwing things away that we don't think about, like energy, electricity.
Yep.
It's also perpetuating, these behaviors are perpetuating and advancing this patriarchal system. And this is leading us to greater levels of disproportionality. So if we don't take the time to learn languages, different languages of creativity, of sustainability, of circular design, we'll be contributing to widening these gaps. So let's make a difference and be disruptive in all manners of things.
Wow, that was really cool, Jason. I think you kind of inspired all of us here listening to this today on, looking at things beyond sort of your day to day and kind of be able to step back and try to look at yourself, through somebody else's eyes, sort of looking at your own hump, what you do every day, the decisions that you make. I think it's really important, and that's really why, I think we really came together to do this. I just can't help but think back to, I had stepped off of the board when my son was born, and when I left, I felt like I had some unfinished business, and you had been sort of stayed on, and you've been fighting the fight, and we were talking about sustainability as we were driving through Denver for one of the events that you invited me over to speak at. And you're like, we got to do this thing. I'm like, absolutely, damn it, we got to go and we got to make this thing happen. And so, that was over a year and a half ago, I think, when we first started talking about that. And since then, you convinced me to kind of run again and rejoin the board. Figured my son is old enough now that he's off to school. I can afford to spend some more time on the kinds of these other important things is just as important, because if we don't make this change happen for him, it's just we're going to be in terrible trouble. That's the reality. So we really wanted to put this event together, and so I'll leave that sort of to you to kind of also kind of tee up a little bit before we get into it.
Thank you, Stephan. So I'm a 1980s punk rocker. I don't have children. So from my perspective, I'm very rebellious. And when I see something that isn't right, and I see something where, the man is sticking it to us kind of thing, or whatever the case may be, I get pissed. I get really fucking pissed, and I really have a hard time looking at things and that are degrading around me, that are, causing so much destruction, not only, culturally, but, with Mother Earth. And so I've decided I'm going to step up and do something about this as well. So when Stephan and I started to collaborate and work on this particular effort, we knew very well that this couldn't just start and stop here. This is an ongoing conversation. And so when we put together and curated the 2020 Sustainable and Circular Design Deep Dive for IDSA, we just had no idea how successful it was going to be. We had literally 600 people from all over the world join us and be a part of this. And that was fantastic. It was definitely a confirmation.
30 plus countries, right, Jay?
That sounds right, yeah. And Texas was considered one of those countries, just so you know. So anyway, but we really needed to ensure that whatever the conversation that we started is something that we will commit to. And so from our perspective, being on the board, it is something that we are now trying to push as an association-wide initiative. We really want to make sure that everything that we do and touch has that sensitivity to it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And part of it too, I mean, we've already sort of hit on this, but again, just to reiterate, we've had these decades of global human activity and the expanding greenhouse effects, that have created these situations that need to be addressed with more urgency than ever, right? And we think design can help, and action must be taken today if we, have any hope of creating these paths towards a sustainable future. But I want to add to that again, this is something that when you go back to the emotional intelligence side of things, you start to learn that we are a culture of people that tend to be distracted. And when we need to reflect on things and look at things in a very deep way, it's very easy for us to push it off. And our phones and smart technology is one of the biggest culprits for that, and is really aided in the fact that we are addicted to complacency as a culture as well. So this is for us to reiterate through this process the importance of us waking up and really involving and engaging in these things.
I mean, even during this presentation, your phone won't leave you alone, for God's sakes.
I know. And I apologize for that. And I just want to say, from my perspective, again, designers more than ever need to invest in learning new languages of sustainability and circular design principles. And you see that, I've said that already a few times because it's true. They're languages. And if we are stuck in our own world and we don't get out of it and we're drinking the Kool-Aid, we're in a bubble, we don't learn those languages and we can't be as effective.
And you're not the only one that's saying this. I mean, you were talking about Norman Foster. So what's going on here? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, for all of our architect friends, they're going to know who Norman is. He's really a guru when it comes to forward thinking and design and architecture and city design. One of the things that you referenced earlier, Stephan, in your slide about sort of the effects of COVID is, how do we look at this? How do we plan ahead? How do we add value to design, both product-wise and architecture? And what he's saying is that, there is going to be some level of change that we feel instantly, again, like this reactive type of scenario. But instead of change, it's merely hastened or accelerated trends of change that were already apparent before the pandemic. And I think this is why it's important for us to recognize how, we have this way of looking at things now based on the context of where we are today. But if we stop, slow down, and reflect, we can see that even from before, there were things that were happening that were driving our thinking. And so, the coronavirus pandemic will not fundamentally change cities, is what his assessment is, but could lead to more sustainable buildings and like a renaissance for urban farming and new future of like monorails. So there's hope within this pandemic, is what he's suggesting.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with him more. And um, honestly, we really have, as designers and architects, interior designers, um, and the entire creative community, we really need to jump outside of our bubble. We really cannot afford to just, do our little thing and forget about it. And oh yeah, we made this thing, and now throw it over the fence and have, the engineer and the manufacturing guy go and make a gazillion one of these things that I made. You need to be cognizant and wary of the impact that you're having on your every decision. You know, so those, when I do my work, the current recommendations that I make, this is, sustainability and circularity are often at their core, but they're also often invisible. What often looks like the simplest way or the best way of solving a problem, or the solutions that I come up with that will make the client the most money, they always have that triple bottom line in line. And you have to start with people first. You have to think of the planet, and then you have to make sure that obviously you make money doing it as well.
Exactly.
So I think that's
Well said.
critical.
So day one, so Stephan and I created 3 meta themes basically to make it easier for curating this experience, because we want to make sure that all facets of life, all forms of design would feel comfortable coming in and sharing in this experience for the deep dive. And so for day one, we decided that sustainable strategy was the focus, right? So that was actually June 4th that we had that, and for the virtual event. And we discussed and dove into Green New Deal, the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We talked about REACH and ROHS and WE and L, LEED, Green Star, We looked at directives, cross-pollination forms, cradle-to-cradle strategies, and triple bottom line.
Yeah. Well, and all this stuff really, kind of wanted us to kind of culminate a day one focusing on strategy, bringing together great leaders in this space, and somebody that's been driving human-centered design as a sort of pioneer decades ago, and then even IDSA with Ocala more than a decade ago. People like IDEO, they really took up the challenge and said, let's work with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and let's think about what is the design for circularity toolkit that we can develop for them and with them that will be sort of the next evolution from Ocala to sort of help drive change that needs to happen. So one of the great workshops that is available for anybody to really view in its entirety was hosted by IDEO, by Chris and Rebecca and Reese on the circular economy. And that sort of helped start things off on day one and really kind of with a practical strategy on how you can take this and adopt it for your own company. Jason, you were mentioning the 17 SDGs, and we had another presenter. Remember who her name was?
She's a very well respected and known person, Lorraine Justice.
Oh, thank you. That's right. So Lorraine, she did an awesome job. We need to make sure by keeping an eye on the environment, we have to consider the United Nations, Sustainable Development Goals. Some 193 countries agreed upon these goals. And while, arguably some of the political challenges that we've had are moving us in the wrong direction, and with COVID, we're having sort of a negative impact, these SDGs provide a framework of sorts for the work of designers, engineers, and companies and nations going forward. For the effort in generally improving the human condition. And that human condition, if you look at it, these are very high level, but these, the root cause analysis of some of these problems are the daily decisions that the creative agencies and the creative people in our industries are taking. The decisions that they're making have that impact, I'll give you a simple example. We've created an opportunity now, for, let's take a water, right? It's not related to design, but in this case, the idea that we could have running water in our houses, it's only been around for most of the world in the last 50 years.
Yep.
Just because you are able to turn on the faucet and let it run and forget about it and go and do something else and come back 30 minutes later, doesn't mean you should.
Exactly. And I want to add to this too, Stephan. Yes, excellent point. Something that is really fascinating about this particular aspect of the UN's SDGs is that normally in a work environment, we have a design brief that's handed down to us. And within that design brief, we interpret it, using our biases through our optics. But not very often do we have the chance to build a design brief based on, looking at these different 17 goals. Like, how would this impact a poverty situation? What about zero hunger? What about good health and well-being? What about life below water? Like, these kinds of things are not they're not considered as a normal process or strategy building concept. And so I encourage anyone who's watching this, and I do this myself, is to really compare and contrast with what the design brief is with what the goals are, and just see where there's some areas of opportunity. And I bet you'll find a lot of innovative opportunities come through that experience.
Yeah, and I would go one step further and say, these might sound as, if you dive into the weeds, they might sound as outrageous goals, but we have to set these outrageous goals to see how far we can reach. It's like our modern day version of JFK's speech about going to the moon. And if you watch the controversial movie released by Michael Moore called Planet of the Humans, you'll probably agree that we don't have a choice. I mean, it's very dark, but we have to kind of, it's a wake up call, and it's not easy to hear, but we got to keep pushing, you know? And, you know, the next thing that we wanted to cover in sort of the day one is, you know, if you're talking about strategy, fundamentally, you have to think about what is your business model, okay? And examples of great business models that we should be following are the companies that have made an effort in converting their traditional C Corp to what is called a B Corp. You can be green and be in the black. You can elevate your brand experience and create an amazing product that everybody's going to want to spend money and a premium to have. We just have to do a better job of creating those products. So you can do that. It is a possibility, and you can use these examples as a roadmap for your own industry. There are plenty of examples out there that I'm sure you can find. Another example, I think, you did a great job of bringing in, Jason, even though I know Jaime, the founder, very well. You really did all the work to bring in Julianne and Blake to speak about these really important topics. And one of the things that they brought to the table was this idea of, I think that we've hit on before, but I think they visually create this very well. In that, historically, we have thought of designers, whether industrial designers or whether interior designers or architects, is we create the product or the experience, the building, the negative space, the industrialized product that we make a million times over, and we can't stop there anymore. So what they did, and there's beautiful visual, they talk about that complexity increases, but knowledge increases as well, and scope. And so you really have to think about, going beyond just the product, the experience, your own organization, the society in which you operate within, the government that's running you, and think of a systemic, holistic approach by thinking of what's the impact that you can have on the entire planet. So, we'd love to dive more into this, but we're gonna, we could be here for hours, but you're gonna probably fall asleep on us. So we're gonna talk about day two here with Jason.
So day two meta theme was process, sustainable process. And what we tried to focus on was the environmentally conscious manufacturing processes, eco design toolkits, guides, and technology, accessibility, materials, bioplastics, and mycelium, and LCA tools. And here, for me, from a process perspective, and also being a designer, being very critical as a thinker, but also visual, I really enjoyed the fact that this Danish company, Asket, has really developed this process where when you get a receipt, you don't only get a receipt that indicates what the product costs you, what's coming out of your pocket, but it also breaks down and identifies what did it really cost to make the product. Because for so long, you can even see it within the food and packaging world, where they sort of hid a lot of the components, and they would hide different aspects of ingredients and process or whatnot. And at some point, they made it legislatively advantageous for us to be able to require them to form and put all the information on there for us to read, so we could be educated consumers. And now you're starting to see this, like within this receipt, which is for a t-shirt, and you're going to probably see more of that. And I think that even considering this language development is important, looking at this and saying, well, how does the trims and the milling and the manufacturing really contribute to the overall cost? So absolutely, the true cost.
That's a great example. And a lot of the examples like these are being identified and carefully curated and crafted into easy to digest case studies. And who does a great job of that is the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. In fact, they have these 3 principles of a circular economy: design out waste and pollution, keep products and materials in use, and regenerate natural systems. So their mission is to accelerate the transition to the circular economy. And they did a great job of kind of highlighting the key things that you need to focus in on, and bringing to our audience a tremendous amount of great illustrations, some of which we can't cover them all, but we've highlighted a couple of them that we're going to be talking about in our next section. But another great organization that did a great job in sort of communicating the holistic approach of combining two expertise together is Matrix 4. They're doing this experiment, and it's a wonderful experiment. In fact, the owner, Patricia Miller, and our industrial designer, Kyle Swen, who we've known for years, kind of created this amazing experiment, this partnership where they're bringing together industrial design and manufacturability together. And it really allows sort of the left brain and the right brain to come together, I think. The creativity and the practical applicability and manufacturability of a real product. And I think they're doing a great job, and they did a tremendous amount of great sort of direction in how, it's not about just throwing something over the fence. You can't afford to do that. And the earlier you bring in the manufacturers into the design and the creative process, the better impact you'll have downstream later as you get finally to produce the actual finalized product.
Hey, Stephan,
yeah.
real quick, didn't they also introduce some type of bio-based plastic for injection molding, which was really unique and new to the industry?
Absolutely, and that actually is a perfect segue into the next slide, because you're right. Matrix 4 has to use the raw material to make something real. And how do you get it? How do you source the right thing? How do you make sure that the product that you're actually making is as sustainable as possible? Well, you have to know, as possible, you need to make sure you understand what options you have out there. And another great presentation and a great presenter that provided a tremendous amount of depth of knowledge is Dr. Andrew Dent, fellow New Yorker, and somebody I've known for many years, who's even though he doesn't come from New York, if you watch his video, you'll hear his very heavy British accent. They talked about a great notion is that there's no such thing as a sustainable material. And why is that? That goes back to the point that you made about Matrix 4, in that you can have this beautiful material, but if you don't use it in the right way, it loses its sustainable or decompostable or recyclable material properties. So unless you do that, you're going to make sure you're going to kind of negate the entire properties of that wonderful material. One of the other things that we wanted to bring together for the processes is, besides materiality and sort of the manufacturing processes, is sort of the technology and the tools themselves that are available, the software, the tools that are there. And so whether it was Autodesk's presentation, or whether it's Sustainable Minds presentation on life cycle assessment, these are the kinds of tools that will allow you to really measure, understand the decision-making process that you need to build for yourself every time you make something new. And these are the kinds of things that will be able to be done earlier in the design process, because a lot of research talks about the fact that the 80% of the costs of the entire project or product are determined in the initial 20% of the design process.
Exactly.
And so you can't afford to do this downstream. You got to do it up front. And
Absolutely.
well, I just have to ask you, what did you think of that Eco Design Challenge that we put together?
I really was impressed. I was impressed at the fact that we had people like GradCAD participate and connect with us and really help build and promote this. We had lots of help outside of that, and with Sustainable Minds. The idea of giving somebody the opportunity to actually put forth, maybe taking a risk as a challenge, not necessarily as something they would do for their actual job, to really understand how to use LCA tools, how to make sure that you're considering all these things, of the upfront impact that it has. And so by having people literally given a month to create the design and have a solution that actually, checked off all the boxes that would indicate that it is a sustainable product, was fantastic. What we got, the output was actually outstanding. I was so impressed with the amount of people showing things.
Yeah, we really wanted to do something different here. I mean, the idea was to really take a sort of a carefully crafted exercise, templatize it, and set it up as a way for people to kind of be able to take all three aspects of the conference and apply them. So think of the strategy. What are the eco-design strategies that they wanted to adopt to make a better toaster? Try out the tools and the processes that would help redesign that toaster, and then create a wonderful experience so that you kind of tie it all together and make a beautiful product as an industrial designer. So that was really the intent of the challenge. And I think the team and the participants, we had more than 50 participants, did a wonderful job with that. I think it was a great illustration of how we can bring all these things together.
Yeah, and from different parts of the world too, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, and because we don't want to get people to fall asleep on us, we're going to kind of keep going here. But I wanted to highlight one of the other things that is really interesting from the architectural and sort of city perspective. There's a way to adopt a very carefully crafted model called the donut model. The donut model was developed by the British economist Kate Raworth, and it highlights the inadequacies of the current global economic system and the dichotomy between social well-being and environmental sustainability. So, focusing on producing and consuming and discarding waste obsessively, this global system is unsustainable. I mean, I don't have to tell you guys, but we've already consumed our entire sort of ratio for the year of our of our expenses for the globe in July this year. With COVID, because of COVID, it was actually it occurred a little bit later than it happened in 2019 because there were people spending less energy, less products, right? But the donut model allows people to kind of think about things in a holistic way and really kind of re-energize your whole city at a top line level and a bottom up approach. So it's truly remarkable. You guys should check it out further if you haven't seen it already. In fact, there's a wonderful case study for the city of Amsterdam and how they've applied the donut model in their particular city.
Didn't they invent donuts in Amsterdam? Oh no, never mind. So for day 3, we decided that the product, the experience, is something that we wanted to focus on. So we basically identified that the singular product versus like a connected experience was what the design community would benefit from learning from. Experience versus design in isolation. What is closed loop? Customer journeys.
Yep, and so one of the great examples of an industrial designer in thinking of the actual product and the experience of that product has been Dieter Rams. And if we look back at his discipline, principles of good design that are decades old, you can almost circle these things. More than 3 of them were actually focusing on sustainability.
Exactly.
So it's really amazing. Good design is honest. Good design is long lasting. Good design is environmentally friendly, right? Absolutely. And good design is as little design as possible. So this is where we have to be thinking of these kinds of principles in every little thing that we do. And a great example of sort of thinking of how to make old things new again is the guys TerraCycle and Loop. So, we go back to the idea of this wisdom from the past. There was a time when you had a circular model already set up and you didn't even know it. And that's called the milkman. And what a simple illustration of this concept that can be just taken and adopted in our modern supply chains, because our supply chains now are so smart that the kind of complexity that was probably inconceivable to kind of fathom and be able to sort of get over a decade ago now can be solved with big data and analytics. And we can really create these really sustainable circular business models that can have a true impact like we really want it to do. Another example of tremendously interesting companies that are kind of changing the way they act is Deso. They're rethinking the business model of the company. So they're using cradle to cradle design. They're a flooring company, and when they made the decision, they were rethinking the business model of the company itself. The idea, was to become a service industry. So service design is something that every designer knows about. He was the CEO, Stephan Clambaneva, was sort of before, I guess, a little bit before his time, relying on leasing systems. So you don't buy the product, you only pay for its use. So the materials remain the responsibility of the company itself. Now, of course, we can do that with cars, we can do that with all sorts of different items. But how often do we actually take responsibility for when the product has reached its end of life? And so this is a great example of how they have done it successfully within their company, and it shows you some great things that you can sort of adopt for your own.
I think real quick, I'd like to add something to that, Stephan, which is, so far we've identified some companies that are European based, right? So like even Mormedy is out of Spain. Something about our brethren over there across the pond leading this sort of thought process is very inspiring to me. And I think that it's catching on more and more, and hopefully through this kind of an effort, we can intuitively help people be educated as to looking at other resources and learning new languages as well, but to be leaders of our own.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, yeah, no, that's a great transition, because here's an example of a building, and the U.S. have been sort of tremendously focusing on LEED. So you see a tremendous impact on the architectural space, large buildings. I mean, I can tell you how interesting my tour was of the I think it's the Bank of America, or is it Wells Fargo? One of those huge buildings right on Bryant Park in New York City. It's I think it's a LEED Platinum building.
Right.
For those online, will send me corrections, please, if I get that wrong. But
please use the chat.
Yeah. It's amazing. And here's an example of another architectural studio that found somebody else's garbage is somebody else's treasure, right? So Villa Welpelu is a house in the Netherlands that was constructed from 60% salvage material. I mean, they use Google Earth to aid in the selection of the construction materials, because they're locating waste that people have thrown, and they're going and salvaging it and reusing it. How amazing is that? I mean, that's just insane. I mean, we often quote cradle to cradle, but William McDonald has been a pioneer, and he's the one that is sourced that came up with that idea. The quoted line, we have a materials in the wrong place problem.
Yes.
That's what he talks about all the time. You can't be it's not just about using and using it up. It's about how you can take it and reuse it and upcycle it, make it more interesting, be higher value. And that's a great example here. And we're going to end with these case studies with a really good, a design diva. Let's be honest, and he can afford it to be. And I've met him a number of times. He always forgets my name.
Brilliant.
It's okay. I don't take it personally. Yves Belaire is awesome. And the example that I want to highlight, although you can read up on a ton of the great work that he's done, is how design can have an impact outside or beyond design. So, when was you remember watching the video? We're not going to show the video. People can find
Right.
it online. It's been around forever. But, the metrics are really interesting, right, Jason?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, this is where, again, reverse sort of engineering almost. So he asked the question is, well, if we're trying to eliminate weight, because when we're shipping shoes all around the world, we have to put the shoes in the boxes go on a pallet, the pallet
Right.
goes in the truck goes on a boat. What if we can eliminate, what's the heaviest thing in there? Is it the shoe? Turns out it's not the shoe, it's the box.
Right.
So a designer doesn't redesign the shoe, he designs the thing the shoe goes in. And he asked a really interesting question, do we really need a box? So the answer ended up being a clever little bag. So look that up. Puma's been very much on the forefront of 50 ways of thinking and doing sustainable design. What you see on the bottom right of your screen is something new. It's been around for forever. So, those are hopefully some examples that you saw. And one of the things that we're going to do here is I'm going to turn it over to Jason to kind of kick things off.
Yes, thank you. Again, Stephan, thank you for all of your insights on this. But we want to end with a little bit of inspiration, just understanding that there's still hope and there's people doing things out there, but we want to kind of work with you to show the differences between different aspects of the meta themes. And as example, like the sustainable use, looking at organic, looking at the walkways in New York and the altering of the systems. And I think we were mentioning it earlier about COVID having positive effects as well, but also things that pre-existed. So this is kind of one of the aspects of that, Stephan. And you wanted to add something about the
well,
about the
again, it's an
compost
example of the cradle to cradle concept, right? So
Right.
Here's the High Line in New York City in the center of your screen, something that to many people was an eyesore that people wanted to tear down.
Right.
And here's a creative agency that came up with this idea of why don't we turn it into a urban park? And
Right.
this has become a tremendously experiential, multi-sensorial park that people can explore, and you can walk through the entire city almost, Lower Manhattan, while avoiding the entire traffic. So these are the kinds of things that you can think about. The kinds of problems that you can solve with these sort of challenges are last mile city systems problems, shared use, multimodal. You can start to solve these kinds of problems. So the other example is honest products here. So hands up, how many people know about some of these really cool really high-end brands that you can buy, whether it's makeup or personal products or or other kinds of examples. Jason, anything you wanted to add here?
Yeah, just real quick, it's interesting because I lived in Argentina for almost 7 years. And so seeing how they are literally leading the charge with some of these concepts. And again, Argentina is made up of like 50% Italian and 50% Spanish, Spaniards. So again, that sort of European influence on forward thinking is definitely evident.
Yeah, well, examples of B Corps like we talked about before, they're come across in this example. So, the younger generations are going to see right through you. So if you're a brand and you're trying to be dishonest with your clients, you're going to lose them. So
Yes.
You've got to create things that are truly honest, transparent, and the casings, with the tomatoes, in Germany, they just are instituting this new experiment where they have two prices on the product you buy at the supermarket.
Right.
Just like you have with a T-shirt that you
Right.
example that you gave. There's two prices: the price that you pay at the till or at the checkout, and the price that it with the hidden costs of subsidies for oil producers and other things that have not been included in the price. So
Exactly.
Until we do a better job of being transparent about the work that we do, things are going to continue. So comment that we're going to make here is, being inspiring in the way that you create things. So if things happen, if you feel that you need to have a package for your product, first of all, really honestly ask the question, do you really need the package? And if you do, is there a way that you can redesign it or you can change it so that it becomes something that's truly useful, or it has a second life, or it can be upcycled, which is why we use the cradle to cradle example here. And there's other products now that are coming out. There's been a lot of announcements from beer manufacturers. There's a lot of a lot of local breweries in the Denver, Colorado area. They should maybe take examples of what's happening. I'm hearing about Heineken doing a paper bottle which dissolves after 6 months. So, you can put it in your composter and you won't have to actually take it back. So, examples like that. And last but
Absolutely.
not least, I think I told you about this, Jason, but, can you, maybe I can prompt you here to, why did I include the 3D print in this example?
Well, I know that from our perspective, one of the things we had talked about was just additive manufacturing, different components and aspects of how to utilize 3D printing. But one thought that I had that I didn't have a chance to share with you that I wanted to is that, I was part of the Gerber innovation conference a number of years ago, and we had this really wonderful designer out of Israel come out, and she did one of the first ever 3D printed fashion clothing lines for a runway fashion show. And one of the things that I thought about as a result of that is the fact that we have this technology that can improve and increase upon our abilities to create within our creative process, to really understand things, but not necessarily go down the route of mass production where we have all these products that end up being thrown out or not, they become obsolete at some point. But by doing smaller runs at more customizable type of scenarios is very applicable. You look at the prosthesis on the upper left, and you can see how somebody can literally design what they want, almost like it's a tattoo for them, but it becomes something that's incredibly functional. And so 3D printing gives them that opportunity to do so.
Yeah, and you take that step further and you kind of think about it. Well, do we need to make a 3 gazillion things of the same, look exactly the same? What if you could just make one example of, of the thing that you need? So just print out the thing that you need when you need it. So it becomes a mass customization type of approach where you have the blueprint for something, but then you can make it your own, and you can make just the ones that you actually need to make and nothing more. So,
In,
we can talk for hours,
well,
Jason,
actually,
right?
well, we have talked for an hour, which is really awesome, and I could keep going as well. But I did want to share that there was a concept that was brought up at the conference I referenced earlier number of years ago about, like, what would it be like for us to, rather than travel with a suitcase full of clothes, if we just basically we knew that we were going to, let's say, Athens, Greece, as an example. I know some people over there, and we know which hotel we're going to, and we actually, when we're checking in online before we arrive, we can choose outfits that we would like, and it would literally 3D print the outfits that we want according to our measurements and according to our likes and dislikes. And then it'd be great if it biodegraded after a couple days. So there's all kinds of opportunities out there that are leading to new business models as well, and new investment opportunities, I might add.
Yep. Yep. And on that note, investment opportunities, we're going to wrap things up because time is money. But we're going to sort of leave you with this sort of holistic slide that kind of shares the entire breadth of our inaugural deep dive. This is just the beginning. We're already preparing for next year. We've started to lock in our speakers already. But you're going to sort of see the types of people that were part of the conversation this year. And we really can't wait to see what comes of next year's conference, and we're glad we can share that with you.
Yes. Thank you, Stephan. It's been awesome to walk through this experience and this journey today. And again, to hear you share your wealth of knowledge, it's always impressive. And thank you for all the work you do, man. You're awesome.
Jason, thank you. And it was sort of a joint journey, and it was a lot of fun doing this together with you.
Thank you. We'll see you guys next time.
See you soon.
Bye.